Ladies, if you had walked into the house yesterday to find 3 roses and a box of chocolates inside a grocery bag on the counter and him off playing a game or something, how would you have reacted? It's certainly better than if he ignored the day completely. Now compare that to if you walked into the house to find him holding those same 3 roses, smiling and greeting you with enthusiasm, if he had that same box of chocolates but presented them after serving up your favorite meal. If the rule for Valentine's Day is basically get flowers and chocolates, and the guys in both scenarios got the same amount of flowers and chocolate, should be enough, right? Does the difference in how they did it matter? Of course it does. To express love to someone does mean you follow the rules of the relationship. But anyone who understands love that knows that it's way more than rules. Doing the minimum is necessary, and sometimes it's the best you've got. But it should never be the standard. Love needs rules, but it needs more than just rules. And that's exactly what the first reading and the gospel are getting at. Sirach is a straightforward reminder that God never gives license to sin to anyone, ever. The commandments are the rules of love, and no one gets to break them. If someone tells you that love means you can ignore the commandments, that you can commit sin for a higher purpose, they are wrong. No pope, bishop, priest, or parent can give you permission for blasphemy, murder, adultery, lies, or theft. Now, obviously, not every rule is as universal and objective as the 10 Commandments. Some rules are temporary, cultural things. Even the way we observe Valentine's Day is mostly a modern Western thing. Some cultures don't do that, and that's fine. But every human being must follow the 10 Commandments in every time, culture, and circumstance. And while we're at it, every Catholic is required to follow the rules of the Church. Now, those rules do include guidelines on the exceptions, but we can't just decide on our own that a rule doesn't apply to me. Mass every Sunday, confession once a year, no communion with mortal sin, getting married in the church, these and others matter. Take Lent, for example. If you're between 18 and 59 and healthy, you have to fast on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. If you are 14 or older, you have to avoid meat on Ash Wednesday and every Friday of Lent. There are exceptions for the sick, the pregnant, the nursing. But to break those rules arbitrarily is a mortal sin. It doesn't matter if you think a dry piece of ham is more penitential than fried fish. The first requirement is obedience. So start there. Just don't stop there. Go on to the important question. Do I follow these rules with love? Do we do the minimum, meet the technical requirements, and then go back to living for our own selfish desires? Sure, a crawfish boil on Ash Wednesday or Good Friday is technically not eating meat, and you can technically call it one meal to count as fasting. But come on, really? You think Jesus hanging on the cross, suffocating and bleeding to death, would look over at you drinking beer and polishing off 10 pounds and say, "Thanks for honoring my sacrifice with your fast"? Is it against the rules? Technically, no. Is it a sin? Absolutely. It is an obvious violation of the spirit of the law to throw a party on Ash Wednesday or Good Friday. And that's what Jesus is getting at in the gospel, the spirit of the law. To be clear again, the spirit of the law does not justify breaking the letter of the law. It is to obey the law for the right reason. A call to shift our perspective from seeing the laws of God as obstacles to seeing them as stepping stones. If your goal is to stay on the ground, a ladder might look like an obstacle, but if your goal is to get on the roof, a ladder becomes a useful tool. And no amount of wishful thinking about being on the roof lets you bypass the ladder. The roof is holiness and love of God. The rungs of the ladder are the commandments and laws of the church. Of course, it doesn't take long for someone trying to climb that ladder, trying to follow God's law, to realize that left to our own devices, we can't keep all the commandments perfectly. Jesus isn't here just to remind us of the spirit of the law. He isn't here just to challenge us to go higher and keep the commands more. He's here to make abundantly clear that we need help. This is why Jesus reminds us that you cannot make a single hair black or white. For all the pretending and covering up we can do, we don't have the power to truly change our biology, much less our hearts and souls. The kind of love and holiness that Jesus asks of us requires a change of heart and a supernaturally strong power of soul. And in our fallenness, our hearts want the wrong things, and we are too weak to do the right thing consistently. And yet, our weakness does not justify ignoring the laws of God. It does not mean we can give up on loving God, loving our neighbor, and striving for holiness. It means that this whole project, this whole way of life called Christianity, isn't really about morality. Though morals matter, you cannot be a good Christian if you live a flagrantly immoral life. But they are not the goal. Jesus Christ is the goal, and Jesus Christ can change our hearts to want what we ought to want. He can strengthen our souls to do what seems impossible and be good. But he will not do it against our wishes. He will not do it in a way that bypasses human nature. God designed human nature, so he's not about to disregard it. And human nature is built on habits. It is built on processes and growth. It is built on a union of body and soul. God can miraculously make food appear in your stomach, but you would be sinning if you laid in bed and expected him to do so 3 times a day. God can miraculously change your mind to be free of addiction, but you'd be sinning if you expect him to just do that. No, instead he tells us, cut off even our right hand if it causes us to sin. Now, yes, that's hyperbole. Don't literally maim yourself. But we all have things that we treat like they're a part of our bodies, right? We all have them. Computers and phones and TVs and toys and snacks and smokes and drinks, things we could get rid of without maiming ourselves if we were serious about getting away from the sins they lead us to. Or at least we could set real boundaries and accountability. If you can't get rid of something entirely, put it where others can see you use it. Use covenant eyes, or cold turkey, or shift, or dumb phone, or lock me out, or one of a dozen other programs designed to help with self-control, both in the computer sense and in the practical program sense. I use some of those things, and there are links in my homily when I post it, if you want to know what I'm talking about. Yes, they cost me money every month and have for a decade. But you should be willing to spend the money if that's what it takes. If you cannot be bothered to spend time researching solutions to your sinful habits, if you cannot be bothered to spend money using those solutions, I don't believe you want to stop sinning. And neither does God. God will not. He will not bypass your human nature. God does not expect us to be perfectly moral and holy, thank God. Only He can make us that way. But He does expect us to form the habits and disciplines of a Christian. God will do things for you that you cannot do for yourself, but He will not do the things you can do for yourself, but simply won't. You cannot discipline yourself into holiness, but you also cannot passively wait for it either. So admit your powerlessness, beg for grace, and then do everything you can do to get better. And you'll find God doing what you can't and expanding what you can. God is love. There are no shortcuts, no loopholes, no techniques to deal with Him. There are, in the end, only two responses to God. Either you love Him enough to put in the effort to love Him more, despite your weakness, or you end up hating Him. There are no alternatives, and anyone who tells you there are is lying to you. So choose love. Choose love. One rule, one habit, one sacrament, one change of heart at a time.